Today I'm going to talk to you about consciousness. And it's a topic that's really dear to my heart. As far as I could remember, I have been thinking about more existential questions about life, right? Like just asking myself, who am I? Questioning, what is the stuff of life that we're working with? And one of the things that really prompted this question was my father had 2 strokes when I was 10 years old. And I quickly found myself in this place of being his physical therapist. And when I turned 18, I became his power of attorney and pretty much dedicated my life to neuroscience and figuring out, the science of perception in order to help people with stroke. There was another reason. And I think when you talk to a lot of people in psychedelics or cognitive neuroscience, they'll tell you of a story that kind of, was a glitch in the matrix for them. And for me, when I was 12 years old, I had a lucid dream. And in this lucid dream, I was on the back of this Jeep and I flew off a cliff in this dream. And I plummeted into this abyss, and I was lucid the entire time. And in that moment, I was just left with my bare awareness, and there's no sense of linkedness. There was no body, there was no mind, there was no history of Lincoln even. And so that really started me on the path of trying to piece it together. And over the years, I try to pull stuff from religion. Like I almost did my communion in Catholicism, and I grew up in a Buddhist family, and all these things to pull together facts and ways of interpreting this experience. And really what I was doing was I was following this yearning of like, it's almost like a yearning for God. So that led to, a million other experiences. I went back to Buddhism in a way that I hadn't experienced Buddhism before, like a very experiential form of Buddhism where I was meditating and like spending, 40 days per year in silent retreat, all to just kind of follow this thread. And so that work has really, followed me into the work I do today. Is, I have a lot of these conversations with cognitive neuroscientists and theoretical physicists, and I'm in a fortunate position where I can help people with chronic pain by using this question that, all the Eastern mystics and anybody who has explored psychedelics or consciousness has asked, and that's, what is the stuff of life? Who am I? Like, if you keep asking, who am I? You'll get to a point where you recognize that you're more than your body, you're more than your thoughts, you're more than your history. And so I had a conversation with a gentleman recently named Donald Hoffman, and he was just this amazing cognitive neuroscientist, and he has these theories around seeing through space and time, which to me was really mind-blowing, because really what he's trying to do and what I've done since the time I was 18, 19 is to bring together Eastern mysticism with cognitive neuroscience. When I was 22, the Dalai Lama sent out this directive to young scientists, and he said, Western science is the lingua franca of the West, right? Like, we have to language mysticism and some of these techniques from religion and spirituality in a way that could be palatable to the West. In the West, people don't agree upon a lot in medicine, and one of the things that people do agree on is neuroscience. And you'll see this in the New York Times, right? Like, pop neuroscience is really popular, and then that's really what I do nowadays is, we treat chronic pain with this framework of helping people to recognize who they really are. And to me, that means using that question of who am I to be able to give people a different sense of self. And we use virtual reality to help people with embodiment. So a lot of people who come to us have phantom limb pain. They'll have complex regional pain syndrome. They'll have stroke-related pain. And one of the things that we do is we give people a virtual body to be able to use as a sandbox, to be able to overcome fear avoidance and to basically embody in ways that they weren't able to embody before. Because for a lot of people, their bodies are not a safe place. And so it's really like training wheels for them to be able to embody more. And the unique thing about virtual reality is you can move beyond your own conception of who you are in virtual reality. We have a lot of phantom limb pain patients who come in and they're combat veterans, they're on opioids, and it's our job to help them to get back to functioning. And when we ask them, it's really simple stuff. It's stuff like, I want to play with my grandkids, I want to get off medications. But to them, their bodies are not a safe place. And so we try to help them as much as possible with having these virtual bodies move in VR space in ways that they can't move in real life. And we use neuroplasticity as a way to show people that you have the ability to change, really. And that's how we language, a lot of the treatments that we do. So, people come to us every day and they're really tied to a certain identity, right? Like it's the thing about that I've learned over the years in doing virtual reality treatment is you can really help people to have a elevated sense of self and to just to recognize that people are a lot bigger than they are, who they think they are. And a lot of times when we run into our patients, they have a real fixation to an identity being a chronic pain patient or a fibromyalgia patient, or even a survivor sometimes. So now we're incorporating a lot of psychotherapy in order to help people with creating more fluidity of his sense of self. And when I started this project, it was mostly an art project. It was my way to teach people Buddhism. And it was a way to basically have a Trojan horse to be able to do these esoteric tantric Buddhist techniques where, you put on different, we call them gods. Like you have a god of compassion, you have a god of equanimity, you have a god of wisdom. And what you realize when you do a lot of these exercises and you're putting on a specific form and you're taking it off and you're hearing the mantras of that specific form and you're putting it on, taking it off, is you realize on a very visceral level how fluid your sense of self is. Like you can move in between these selves. And there's always an insight moment with our patients where they realize they're not just their body, they're not just their mind. My suggestion is for you to ask, who am I? And keep asking that, because when you keep asking that, it can lead to a real liberation. So, thank you. I know that I'm not just a VR entrepreneur. It's mostly a lot of what I'm not. So I'm not a Buddhist. I'm a son, I'm a friend, I'm all these different things, but I'm not a specific person. I'm all those things and more. Yeah, this is something I think about almost every day. It's a part of my daily practice. So in Buddhism, we call it shunyata, right? And I think that's something that doesn't get translated well to the West. And it's really pointing to the fact that there's no inherent existence. You know, things are real, but things aren't really real. They're like there and relative, and we can speak to them, and there's pointers in the world. But a core tenet of Buddhism is that I'm not separate from you. Things are impermanent. Like, I don't inherently exist. I'm more of an icon on a desktop. And the reason why that's important, and the reason why talking to science and language in a way that can really translate to the West is when you really figure out what the stuff of life is made of, that you can, that you can go all the way to the bottom of the well, right? Like, there's particle physics, and then you go past that into quantum. But that's never ending, right? And if you can take the Buddhist view, then you'll have more compassion, you'll have love, you'll have, more of like a heart-centered way of being in life, I think.